Current Affairs. Now we bring you a discussion on allocation of coal blocks and allegations of corruption. The participants are N.K. Singh, former Joint Director, Central Bureau of Investigation, Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, economist, and Parsa Venkateshwar Rao Jr., senior journalist, who initiates and moderates the discussion.
Good evening. We are going to discuss the issue of the allocation of coal blocks and allegations of corruption. This arises from the CAG report of March 2012. The CAG report had observed that according to policy, coal production augmentation had to be done to increase power supply, and when it was found that the public sector units were not able to meet with the targets, it was decided to give it to the private players also, so that there is increase in power production after the coal mining. The conditions of coal mining were that they were captive mines and they have to supply power. What the CAG had observed was, despite the fact that the private players were asked to come in so that there is increase in power production, that there was no increase in power production. This was a failure of policy at one level. And secondly, there were allocations which did not follow the procedural norms. People who were not eligible, who hadn't any prior experience in the sector, were given the licenses, and those eligible. So it is not a question of whether it's public sector versus private sector. All the players, irrespective of where they came from, were the eligible criteria followed. The CAG's conclusion was, going by the evidence produced by the Coal Ministry, that they did not. But the earlier conclusion was, the reason why they went into this performance report was the fact that there was an increased coal imports to meet our power needs, whereas there was a lot of coal available in the country which was not being mined. And secondly, in spite of the policy initiative that it should go to the private players because the public sector undertakings were not able to do it alone, it was not done. So we have got two levels at which we are looking at this issue. Later on, we found that there was a separate complaint by two members of the BJP, Prakash Javadekar and one more person, Hansraj Ahir, who made a complaint to the Chief Vigilance Commissioner, who found that there was a prima facie case in one of the coal allocations, and he forwarded it to the CBI for inquiry. It is that CBI inquiry that went up to the court, and it's now being monitored by the Supreme Court. So distinctly there are two levels. At one level there is a policy failure. At the second level that there are allegations of corruption. Mr. Singh, if we were to focus on the failure of meeting the procedural norms and which gives rise to corruption charges, to what extent is the CBI able to follow because CBI has got its plate more than full and it has to pursue so many cases of corruption. Do you think it is in a position to pursue it to the end and effectively?
Yes, it can. And as you mentioned already, that investigation by CBI is being monitored by the Supreme Court. And it has been asking for a status report on the progress of investigation. And why the Supreme Court decided to monitor it, there are several reasons for that. Number one, the amount involved, the amount of corruption involved, money, CAG report, etc. Number two, at the relevant time, the Prime Minister himself happened to be in charge of coal. Perhaps we cannot speak much at this stage because the case is under investigation and the investigation is being monitored by the Supreme Court. But there are many other important vital issues that have arisen out of it. For instance, the Supreme Court has raised the question of autonomy of the CBI. To what extent CBI is autonomous? Autonomous in the sense that whether it is free, not unbridled freedom as it said it, but whether it is free enough to pursue the investigation, as you said. The CBI can pursue that. Perhaps it is allowed to do the investigation. To what extent there is a ministerial interference in the investigation. All these things have cropped up during the investigation and monitoring of the cases by the Supreme Court. And as we know, a stage came when the CBI was supposed to present a status report. And it came to the notice of the Supreme Court that the very status report on the progress, allegations are against the Coal Ministry, allegations are against the PMO. And when the status report was prepared, was about to be presented, Law Minister sent for the CBI director. Not only saw the status report, but made changes in it. These are all established. The Coal Ministry officials visited the CBI, had a look at the status report and made changes in it. And ultimately what happened, we know that the Law Minister had to go in view of the very serious criticism by the Supreme Court against the conduct. And then again the question of ministerial interference in the CBI. The group of ministers was formed because Supreme Court said that pass an act, show us an act, giving autonomy to the CBI. And otherwise we'll decide it. And so ministerial group was formed. Their recommendations are before the Supreme Court and they are seized with the matter.
Paranjoy, before you step in to add to what Mr. Singh has said, one thing, if you step back and see, the CAG had observed in its report, one of the committee's, Coal Ministry's thing is, that if you make this allocation to the private players, there would be a windfall profit which cannot be avoided. Now, this went beyond the windfall profit, or was there some more hanky-panky involved there?
Let me answer your first question first. Not only were some of the companies, corporate entities that got the allocated coal blocks were not eligible in the first place, it was also, having got that allotment, they did not mine the coal. They waited for prices to go up. They sold the shares in the company and thereby got windfall profits. Indeed, there are many such cases. Let me add to the points that Mr. N.K. Singh has made and what you have made to tell you why this entire episode, which the media describes as Coalgate, is truly unprecedented and unique. It's never happened before. First, the amount that is allegedly involved, as has been claimed by the Controller and Auditor General of India, though it's a notional figure, 1.86 lakh crores, which in today's exchange rate is somewhere in the region of about $30 million. That makes it an amount which is huge. Now, you may disagree whether this is the actual amount that has been lost to the exchequer or even if it's a notional loss. But the amount that has been put out by the Controller and Auditor General of India, which is a constitutional authority, is indeed mind-boggling. Having said that, let's go on to the other aspects of this entire episode which make it truly unique. As has already been pointed out, since the Prime Minister was in charge of the Ministry of Coal at particular points of time when these episodes took place, or these allotments of coal blocks took place. Why? Because the then Minister of Coal, in and out of his position, he was in jail on one occasion, on another occasion he was aspiring to become the Chief Minister of Jharkhand. Be that as it may, what is unique is that the Prime Minister himself has responded to the Controller and Auditor General's report by way of a detailed statement which he made in Parliament. So again, this is unprecedented. Typically what happens is after the CAG places a report, the Public Accounts Committee takes it up and then the matter is debated and discussed at the level of the Public Accounts Committee, and then the government is expected to provide an action taken report. But in this particular case, the Prime Minister himself has made a statement in Parliament. A number of other aspects of this case which make it very unique. Not only is the former Law Minister, Mr. Ashwini Kumar, had to resign. Before he did so, the Additional Solicitor General of India,
right,
Mr. Harin Rawal, put in his papers because he was put into a great deal of embarrassment because it was found that what he had told the Supreme Court was actually incorrect. This again makes it truly unique. What is also unique about this case, that some of the papers and files cannot be found. They are missing. Some of those papers are yet to be located. Finally, the point I wanted to make is that, look, observations that were made by the Supreme Court against India's premier police investigating agency, that's the CBI or the Central Bureau of Investigation, is described as a caged parrot. Now, this again is perhaps unprecedented, and as Mr. Singh has rightly pointed out, it calls into question the bigger issue of the independence and autonomy of the CBI, and this case being monitored by the Supreme Court of India. I want to make one last point, and this is the issue of crony capitalism. That the names the names of the individuals who have been allegedly involved in, getting unfair and allegedly corrupt gains from this is really a who's who of the Indian political class and the Indian business class. Not only is Mr. Kumaramangalam's name been come up named in the first information report, the former Coal Secretary, Mr. P.C. Parak, then another former Coal Secretary, Mr. H.C. Gupta. But look at the other peoples. Mr. Naveen Jindal, a Congress Member of Parliament. Mr. Rajendra Darda, the owner of the third largest, most widely circulated newspaper, Lokmat Group, and his brother, Mr. Rajendra Darda. Then we have names, allegations against the brother of the former Minister of State for Coal, Mr. Santosh Bagrodia. We have allegations in the CBI's FIR against the former Minister of State for Coal, Mr. Dasari Narayan Rao. We have allegations against the former Minister of State for Information and Broadcasting, Mr. Jagat Rakshakan of the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam. Then we have allegations against the brother of the former Minister for Food Processing, Mr. Subodh Khan Sahai. We have a name like that of Mr. Abhijit Jaiswal, who belongs to the same community as the present Minister of State for Coal, that is Mr. Sri Prakash Jaiswal. There's also a Bharatiya Janata Party member of Parliament, Mr. Ajay Sancheti, who's been associated with one of the companies that have received these coal blocks. So we are today, in some senses, dealing with something that India has never seen before in its contemporary history. These are first information reports. They are merely at the level of, there are no charge sheets yet. I'm not even saying they're guilty or not guilty, culpable or not culpable. I'm not even making any such suggestion. But so many big names have come up in this context.
As a person who has dealt with investigations, why is it this kind of foul play, on the face of it, so apparent in all these governmental procedures? Is it because the procedures are not transparent enough? Is it because we don't have a fair system of rules and regulations by which we can keep the non-players out and the real stakeholders are in it? Apart from the particular cases which have to be taken up.
My personal view is that the rules are there. The system is in place. It is the deterioration in the level of morality amongst the rulers, the political class, which has also sort of cast its dark shadow on the bureaucracy. It is Lal Bahadur Shastri who founded the CBI. And CBI, we are proud in earlier days when you don't allow institutions to do their job, as Supreme Court has observed and has asked for explanation. The law minister had to go, and the Supreme Court has said, make a law. Give autonomy. Autonomy doesn't mean full freedom or complete freedom, unbridled. We have legal system in the country under which investigating agency and the CBI is autonomous as far as investigation is concerned, and it does not allow any sort of interference by political authority. But it is under chain. If you have to register a case against an officer of the Joint Secretary and above, you have to take the permission of the department or ministry concerned. So the politicians come into the picture. And so they may allow you to do the investigation. If you complete the investigation, and if you have a prima facie case, if you have to go to the court against the accused person, you have to take sanction from the government, the law ministry. And so you don't have the freedom. If there is an acquittal in a case, I can give instances. If you have to file appeal or revision, again you have to go to the government.
Do you think that we need an ombudsman or a monitoring authority which is outside the political executive? Will that work?
It is absolutely necessary. But there has to be political will.
Here we are discussing the coal sector, whether it's coal mining, coal production. Do we need somebody to monitor whether things are working okay in the sector, whether it's a public sector player or a private sector player?
It is already there. There is a vigilance wing which is accountable and reports to the CVC, Central Vigilance Commissioner, in each ministry.
The main point you have to realize about the CVC, you go to the website of the CVC and there's a long list of officials of the rank of Joint Secretary above, or the equivalent of Joint Secretary, against whom the CVC has recommended that prosecution proceedings commence. But they have not received the permission of the concerned ministry or department. So this is a huge anomaly. Even though the CVC has recommended that prosecution proceedings be commenced against particular government officials or officials in the public sector, their own heads of department have not done it. That's the first point to note. The second point...
That creates a rot.
Yeah. On specifically the issue of coal mines and coal mining and the coal block, there are 2 or 3 things that need to be noted. First, as we go back to where you did, we have huge reserves of coal, but we are also importing coal. Why? Because we are unable to mine coal. Then is that because Coal India Limited, which has a like 80% of monopoly on that, why has it not been able to produce coal? And because it's not been able to produce coal, you are then letting private players come in. Now we are seeing, say in the case, the most recent case involving Mr. Birla and Mr. Parak, the issue was Neyveli Lignite and Mahanadi. A joint venture was formed in which a company called Indian Aluminium, which was subsequently became a part of Hindustan Aluminium, which is headed by Mr. Birla, became a part of that thing. No, this is not the first time it's happening. CBI is saying this was reserved for the public sector, but the private sector got benefits. What Mr. Parak is saying, that if there was a conspiracy between him and Mr. Birla, then what about the minister in charge, which is the Prime Minister, who signed and approved it? Now, again, the CBI FIR mentions competent authority. Who was the competent authority? Now, these are questions that need to be answered. Why? Because an impression has been created that Mr. Parak was like a whistleblower, and you are here trying to, in a sense, a person who could be a witness is being sought to be painted as an accusation. This is one view that is coming through. The more important and the substantive point is the lack of transparency in the entire process of allocation of coal blocks. Yes, you have a screening committee. State governments are represented. But at the end of the day, the final say is the Ministry of Coal. And the Minister of Coal. The screening committee recommends to the Ministry of Coal. And the Ministry of Coal is headed by the Minister of Coal. Now, what is very interesting is that what Mr. Parak has said, that he had suggested a more transparent system of auctioning of these coal blocks. But this entire matter moved back and forth within the ministry, to the law ministry and back, because within the government, including some of the ministers, were apparently not interested in a system of auctioning. Apparently some of the state governments were also not interested. The short point is, even though the Prime Minister in principle approved of a system of transparent system of public auctioning of coal blocks, it took 8 years for that government to finally, that intent of the Prime Minister translate into actual rules. So that is also an extremely unfortunate development.
You know, one of the issues in this Parak case is, as you have mentioned, it was allocated, the screening committee has rejected Hindalco and gave it to initially to the Mahanadi coalfields and Neyveli Lignite. Now, what I understand from the coal ministry sources, it's a common practice because the public sector players are not in a position to bring in the expertise or the capital or whatever it is. They get into this joint venture systems under the aegis with the approval of the government and the ministry. Now, if this policy had been transparent, then there would not be any ruckus.
It is not only sort of a policy of joint venture or this or that. If you go into the minutes of the standing committee, where Birla's sort of application was rejected, and the standing committee was chaired by...
Screening committee, sir.
I'm sorry.
Screening committee was chaired by the Secretary of Coal.
And it is that committee which rejected application of Hindal, because they had already got one block, and this was for allocation of block 2. And the block 1, he had violated the terms of contract. It had not been fully exploited. These are the reasons mentioned in the minutes of the... And so almost you can say that it was blacklisted. And that's why it was not allocated. And thereafter, as things have coming out, Mr. Parak met the Prime Minister. I don't show that... I'm not making any allegation at all against the personal integrity of the Prime Minister. But there are many other aspects. I must be very frank about the registration of this FIR. You know, not everything that is being said against this action are without substance, I must say. Not everything that Mr. Parak is pointing out without substance. There is a merit in what he says. I mean, or what others are pointing out. Because, you know, in CBI we have certain golden rules we have all along followed. Under what circumstances we register a criminal case?
Can I ask you a very frank question now that you have been there? Does the CBI ever... There is a political pressure. Now there is another kind of pressure that they have to find a guilty person and you have to file an FIR to prove that the case is moved, that your investigation is moved. Are you under that pressure?
Well, to tell you very frankly, if the CBI is worth its name, if the director CBI
is worth the pressure.
No, the pressure is always there. It is up to now. For instance, he has got too many safeguards. He has a fixed tenure of 2 years. I mean, things are much better.
And in this case, sir, as you have pointed out, the Supreme Court is monitoring the case.
Yes, he's right. And the law minister had to go on the basis of report of what the safeguard wants. So it is not under the pressure. It is if at all something has happened, that is compromise.
See, time alone will tell in which direction this case goes. Who is responsible, who is not responsible. Now, one of the points that is being made, that is, there is not necessary to have a quid pro quo. In this case, or what they say, mens rea. Now, here, there may not have been a quid pro quo. What was the alleged conspiracy? Mr. Birla is representing his case. He does it with Naveen Patnaik, the Chief Minister of Orissa. He is doing it with Mr. Parak, the Foreign Secretary, with the Prime Minister. At the end of the day, every businessman will lobby, if you don't like the word lobby, will make presentations to further their own business interests. In this case, there is a aluminium facility, and as you said, there was this whole captive thing. So captive for what? Not just power generation, but for other users of that power, like cement production, like steel production, like aluminium production, and all that kind of stuff. Now, this is what is apparent there. Mr. Parak is also saying that, look, yes, first, as a head of the committee, we rejected the application. Then the representation came. Then he was asked this. Hindalco became a joint venture partner of 15%, and then it was approved. But then the issue is, he is after all just a Secretary of Coal, and he has a boss, and his boss happens to be the Minister of Coal, who at that particular point of time happened to be the Prime Minister of India. So somewhere along the line, the CBI has to finally establish what was the conspiracy, what was, if any. And let me also suggest a few things over here to you. This is right now just at the stage of a first information report, or what you describe as a preliminary inquiry.
No, it is a FIR. It is no, I must say, not that preliminary inquiries only have been registered in this coal gate. This very thing is a first information report. It is a regular case. It is a full-fledged regular criminal case.
It enters the legal process now, judicial process.
Like any other case registered at a police station. The legal process has been set in motion. They are accused. The copy of FIR has gone to the court of law, or should have gone to the court of law. No, I just wanted to add one thing about this on the basis of my long experience in CBI. You know, CBI, we always observe enormous precaution, abundant precaution, because everybody knows mere registration of a case carries so much of stigma. It can finish a business house. It can finish the career of an officer.
You are saying CBI is never overzealous?
No, overzealous no. The rule, the internal rule of precaution that always we observed, and we had the benefit, enormous benefit, in the sense that for instance, Parak changed his own decision. Apparently, it may look that he has shown favor to builders, but the golden rule that we always observed, that unless we are satisfied that the allegations here, but unless there are possibility of this case ending in prosecution of accused in a court of law, we refrain from registering a regular case. Because, just mere showing of favor by a public servant may not be enough provocation to register a case. There should be some lend-in,
which will come up later in the due course of the case.
Some indications should be there.
I have a question for Mr. N.K. Singh. Because I want to know what does he make of the reactions of the Minister for Commerce and Industry, Mr. Anand Sharma, who is saying that he's agreeing with the views of the Chambers of Commerce and the Industry Association, that given Mr. Kumaramangalam Birla's iconic status, that this has actually harmed the image of the entire business community. And one other question, sir, the reaction of the Association of Indian Administrative Service Officers, the IS officers, who also have apparently been very, very upset and angry with what has happened. So I'd like your reaction.
Yes. IS association is entirely different thing. It is a voluntary association. I mean, it may say anything, whether proper, improper. But I personally feel that conduct of the Commerce Minister has been atrocious. He's a part of the government.
But you feel when the CBI filed this FIR, it was fully cognizant of the seriousness of the thing, and it would not have otherwise gone into an FIR. It was fully convinced that there is a case.
Well, this is minimum that is expected of an agency like CBI. If it cannot...
What I would like to raise is two questions. Paranjoy, how do we get out of this trap? The particular cases would always be coming up and all that. How do we create at least not a perfect system, an apparently okay system that will minimize this kind of corruption.
We have already done that.
Yeah.
What should have been done 8 years ago has now been done. Now
The
we have
auction
set in place a set of new rules and regulations which will ensure that at least in the future the allotment of coal blocks, these are natural resources, these are resources that belong to the people of this country. The government has to act as a custodian, as a trustee of the resources. There are so many Supreme Court judgments which have actually pointed this out. So we need a transparent, a fair, a balanced system whenever you are allocating access to natural resources. And if you have that, then all these allegations of corruption, of cronyism will go. So I believe that what should have happened at least 8 or 10 years ago has now finally been put into place. Unfortunately, this interim period, all that happened, will cast a very, very long shadow on the working of this country. And I do believe that this is an unprecedented kind of an episode.
Because let us remember one thing.
It's certainly not going to help this country, and many of these cases and allegations will backfire.
What seems to be happening is in any democracy across the world, there are these special interests who do lobby with the governments, who do get their, favors done and favors not done. What we can do is just make them transparent. I mean, I think we cannot eliminate them completely.
Absolutely.
That would be utopia.
And just one small intervention, this is not the first time it's happened that the Hindalco is become a joint venture partner into an coal block which was apparently reserved for public sector undertakings like Neyveli and Mahanadi. In the past, this happened.
No, what I want to do is why, under what conditions was this joint venture formed?
No,
and what were the reasons?
That is a matter of investigation for the CBI. But I'm merely saying that in the past too, coal blocks that had been apparently reserved for public sector undertakings, say the case of the National Thermal Power Corporation, NTPC, and eventually Reliance Power gets access to that. I'm talking about the Sasan project. So I'm saying these are issues that have to be discussed, debated in an open, transparent manner by the government. Otherwise, whenever it's done behind closed doors, in a non-transparent manner, without a public auction, you're going to have these kinds of allegations.
Do you think at the time, taking for example this Neyveli Lignite and Mahanadi thing and Hindalco, if they felt that they needed to form a joint venture, should they have been referred to a body which would have said, it is transparent enough?
So you see, the problem is you had a screening committee.
Are there commercial reasons?
There could be 1,001 commercial, non-commercial reasons why you take a decision, but do it in a transparent manner.
Exactly.
You are having a screening committee, you have a group of bureaucrats and officials taking decisions behind closed doors. Nobody gets to know until it's all happened.
So what is missing seems to be that we are not talking about the rules and procedures which are apparently transparent so that people can know why a decision has been taken and whether a proper sequencing has been followed or not. Not that we can eliminate or we can, given the human system which is full of holes and all that, how much more efficient it can be made, and that seems to be the issue. The particular cases of corruption will remain and they have to be punished, and CBI will play a role in it. But we need to evolve a general overall system which will be efficient and works. Now what is happening is the system is not working and the country is paying a price both economically and in terms of probity.
In addition, an autonomous apparatus to oversee anti-corruption apparatus like Lokpal, upgraded CBC, and an autonomous CBI to do investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with that administrative point, but I also feel that we need a more transparent system of rules and norms, which are really fair enough, but which are not known right now. Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on allocation of coal blocks and allegations of corruption. The participants were N.K. Singh, former Joint Director, Central Bureau of Investigation, Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, economist, and Parsa Venkateshwar Rao Jr., senior journalist, who initiated and moderated the discussion. It came to you in the program Current Affairs, produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website, news on air.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.